Greetings and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. This is State Representative Mike Mrowicki from Putney and the Windham 4 District of Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. We have elections coming up before you know it, and we have a race for governor. Today's special guest is Sue Minter, who is running for governor. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I know from working together in the House and all your work with recovery after Tropical Storm Irene, Vermonters might not know particularly who did it, but that you had a lot to do with pulling things together. We'll talk about that in a little while. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know you, and what is it you bring to this race that you want people to vote for you?
Sure. Well, I want people to know where I'm from. I live in Waterbury. I'm a working mom with two wonderful kids who've gone through our public school. Actually, one is through and one is still in. And I've been throwing my life for the last 25 years into my family, my community, and also into public service. I have volunteered in our schools and our early childhood center. I've volunteered on the Planning Commission and our Downtown Revitalization Committee. I coached youth soccer for 13 years. And then I had the privilege of serving in our legislature for 6 years, including with you, Mike, including through tough times of the recession. And after my fourth election, was appointed to be the deputy and then the secretary of the Transportation Agency. So I have been running the second largest agency of our state government, balancing a $600 million budget, managing a workforce of over 1,300 people, a very diverse workforce. And I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done, building our bridges faster, cheaper, and smarter, and making them safer, improving our roads and expanding public transportation and access for bicycles and pedestrians. But I am most proud, frankly, of the work that we did after Tropical Storm Irene, and everybody in this part of the state remembers well 2011, 15 inches of rain in some areas just coming down in torrents and tearing our state apart. And we had over 500 miles of road damaged and hundreds of bridges, and it was our job at the Transportation Agency to mobilize quickly, effectively, to partner and to innovate and to do really what no one thought possible, which was to rebuild over 500 miles of road in less than 4 months. And it's an incredible team, and I'm very proud. At the end of that phase of the emergency, when we celebrated the last mile of closed road that we had opened, that's when the governor asked me to step in and become the Irene Recovery Officer. So my work went from roads and bridges to thinking and working with families and individuals who had lost their homes. We had over 3,500 homes damaged across the state. Even farmers, we had 20,000 acres of farmland flooded, businesses gone. We had whole communities like Wilmington and my town of Waterbury were ghost towns. So it was an extraordinary time and an extraordinary experience. It was very challenging, but also not just rewarding, but inspiring because of the way that Vermonters came together and rescued one another. It was a privilege to be leading that recovery and to know so many parts of our state and so much of what we're capable of. And that's really, I think, the inspiration for me to want to run and continue my leadership in this great state. I will say, as I'm running for office now and traveling everywhere, speaking with so many people, whether it's educators, businessmen, manufacturers, social service providers, I see more and more, Mike, that too many Vermonters are struggling just to make ends meet in an economy that is really stacked against them. And I believe that it will be my job to do three key things. Help to grow the economy and get more livable wage jobs, support our working families, and to protect our environment. And I've got a plan for doing all three.
A lot of people in Vermont, I don't think, understood the scope of damage that was done, and because some of it was scattered. I know in our county, for instance, there was a lot of damage in West Brattleboro, but other parts near the river didn't have any damage at all. My town of Putney hardly saw any damage, but right next door in Westminster, they lost a bridge. Two very important farms received huge damage, Allen Brothers Farm and Harlow Farm. So I think unless you were directly affected, it was easy to forget how extensive that damage was. And it brings up a question that I think comes up. These are sometimes they used to be called storms of the century, but now we've had about 8 storms of the century already. We have a changing climate. What does that look like for you as a governor? What can a governor of a state do in regards to the global warming effect that's worldwide, but how does it then affects Vermont in a way that seeing storms like this?
Well, I will tell you, I feel it deeply. The fact that it isn't just that climate change is real, it's that it's here. And for those of us affected by Irene, where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a tiny brook became a raging torrent and tore houses off their foundations, we see what can happen overnight. And I had the privilege after Irene, not just of working here in Vermont to make sure we be thinking about how to become more resilient and prepared for the future, but I was appointed or served on President Obama's task force on climate preparedness and resilience. So actually worked with folks from across the country, many towns, counties, and states post-disaster about how to prepare for what we know is ahead. We know the science, and even now the downscaled version of the science. And here in the Northeast, it's really going to be about severe and more frequent precipitation events. That can be in the form of flooding like we've had, or snow emergencies like we've seen in Massachusetts and all the way down the East Coast. So what can a governor do? One thing that we can do is, A, be more prepared. We can make sure that our communities have the shelters ready, the emergency plans, the understanding of where people live and where they need help. So it's community level planning and preparedness, but also really as a state, in fact, being more prepared, having more drills, having an action plan for how to come together to solve our pressing challenges in a crisis. It's really often about communication and collaboration and a structure of organization. I certainly learned a lot of that during Irene. But a governor can also lead with other partners in the region. And that's what I think is critically important as we think not just about being prepared for the future, but how do we move away from the carbon economy? And that's why I want to continue the momentum in this state around renewable energy. We're really a leading edge state in this country. We've had a 10-fold increase in solar panels in the last 6 years. And our economy is actually benefiting from this investment. Learned this week, 1 out of 17 jobs are now in the renewable energy economy. So as a governor, I can continue to push and pursue policies and programs to advance efficiency investment. Because, of course, when we create more efficient homes, we need to consume less energy, and the cheapest energy is the one that you don't have to consume. So it's about efficiency. It's about renewable energy. But it's also about not just in Vermont, but our whole Northeast economy. I've had the opportunity as the Secretary of Transportation to collaborate with leaders throughout New England and even the whole Northeast around transportation investments. But I want to be a governor that continues that collaboration with all of the northeastern states and down the coast, because it has to be a regional approach to getting off our carbon economy, to reducing the carbon emissions that are really going to turn around, both seeing that our economy can grow, but most importantly, that the impacts of climate are reduced for the future.
Yeah. I think that's essential to be able to look at this regionally, because we're not going to do this by ourselves, and that ability to work with the Northeast states, the provinces to our north, is going to be essential for that. And I think you made a good point about this is where the economy of the future is going to be, between conservation, efficiency, and renewables. There's a lot of room for economic growth, and right here in Windham County, we're seeing a lot of that. Now, you have been spending a lot of time in Windham County. We appreciate that. What kind of things are you seeing that you think the rest of the state should know about?
Well, I will say I love coming to Windham County, whether it's to do a great bike ride on Route 30, whether it's I've explored some really fun runs up beyond this area. But more importantly, I've been visiting your downtown, seeing revitalization activity that I know is going to continue to help grow. I loved visiting this morning the program that is not just your rebuilt co-op, but combining the co-op with affordable housing units at the top through the Windham Housing Trust. I see affordable housing efforts. I see, of course, the challenges of poverty. I know that after the recession, all of Vermont was hit hard. But I also know that since the recession, some parts of the state have rebounded easier or more robustly than others. And frankly, the southern part of the state, Windham County and Bennington County, has had more stagnant growth. So it's an area that I think needs acute attention. And I know that the community here in Windham is really working hard to think about a different future, to create a comprehensive economic development strategy, especially coming together after as Vermont Yankee is closing. And it's when Vermonters come together and develop a vision for how to grow their economy, how to revitalize their community, that's when change happens. I saw it happen after Irene. I saw whole communities transform. Look at Wilmington, what it was like 5 years ago and today. A community that was in crisis has come back and is now rebounding. I know the future for Brattleboro is bright because when I come, I see leadership. I see people thinking about what are the strategies, the green economy, also really innovative ideas about developing the workforce for the future. And that's a real priority for me as the next governor because too many, almost half of Vermont youth, do not continue their education after high school. And at the same time, we have businesses around this state and in this county that I've spoken to who say, I would expand, but I can't find qualified workers. So what I want to do is make sure we work with the folks in Windham County to expand, getting more kids educated, training, certification, apprenticeship, internship, aspiring to a career with a livable wage job. Because that's how we can both grow the economy and break the cycle of poverty.
You've mentioned a few times the spirit of Vermont, how we came together after the tropical storm. I just heard a story about one of my heroes and role models, Dorothy Day. She's the one who started the Catholic worker movement,
yes,
feeding the homeless. And I didn't realize, but she grew up in the San Francisco area when they had the great earthquake there at the turn of the last 1900s. And what was inspiring to her was seeing how people came together. And it really inspired her life because she asked the question, why don't we act like this all the time to each other? I think that's the kind of spirit you bring to Vermont and reminding us how we came together during Irene and what we can do if we continue in that way moving forward. When you look at the future of Vermont, what I'm hearing from you is a lot of hopeful ideas. What I'm hearing from opposition is doom and gloom about Vermont is not the place to live. No wonder our kids are leaving when they hear about Vermont's bad for business. It's not the place to live. What do you say to counter that kind of gloom and doom?
Well, I think it's true that the experience after Irene was extraordinary for me personally. It was really a transformative experience and leaves me inspired about what is possible. To see people go from crisis and create opportunity out of crisis. Our community of Waterbury was a ghost town after Irene. We had 2/3 of our village homes were damaged. And there was a sense of despair. But the community came together and rolled up their sleeves and created a vision of what they wanted to achieve and worked tirelessly in task groups and applying for grants. And now you see a community vibrant. The center of the craft brew economy. We've got a new library that we were never able to fund, but because of Irene, we came together with a new municipal building and a library, and the state office complex, a new LEED certified, resilient office to bring the employees back, and also to have a workspace that I think is much more conducive to great productivity. So I actually do believe in Vermont, and I believe in our future. I believe that Vermont can be a magnet for young people and of innovation and entrepreneurship. We have great innovators and entrepreneurs, and that's what the new economy needs and believe is doing it. So it isn't just about having business growth and opportunity and understanding what is our comparative advantage and what are our assets and how do we build on our strengths. It's also addressing the challenges, and it's so inspiring to talk about Dorothy Day and what she's done in communities across this country. And to this day, there are still Catholic worker houses that are very active. But we do have an issue of poverty that is growing throughout this state. And I am extremely focused on how do we actually create ladders of opportunity out of poverty? Because if we don't do that, we are not going to build that economy of the future. So it's about getting more education and training and aspiration and hope for the next generation. And yes, promoting what's possible, believing in the future, painting that picture so that we can achieve it. You know, if we just said it's impossible, we're never going to get fixed, that's what would have happened. So I don't think it helps to say how bad things are. I think it helps to be realistic and face the challenges and try to solve the problems, but you do it by aspiring to a great future ahead. And I believe in that future.
Yeah. We've only got a few minutes left here, but there's another issue I want to get some comments on from you. Vermont's one of the safest states in the Union, one of the healthiest states in the Union. But there's an area where we do have some challenges. Domestic violence is a problem in Vermont, and Vermont has an unusually high percentage of domestic violence murders. Last year we voted on a bill that would prohibit convicted violent felons and domestic abusers from possessing firearms. There was quite a bit of to-do in the Statehouse about that, and there is still around the state. I voted for that bill, and I would vote again for it. I think while I approve of the Second Amendment rights, rights come with responsibilities, and when it comes to domestic abuse, I think it's a special case here. I've appreciated your leadership on this issue, and I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Thank you so much. It is a difficult issue in the state of Vermont because we have such a strong hunting heritage and a commitment to that Second Amendment, which I share deeply. But I believe that we can actually have the Second Amendment go hand in hand with gun safety. And that's why I've stood up to support background checks for all gun sales. We already have background checks required for all sales in federally licensed dealers. And I believe that we should close the loophole and ensure that the same is true for guns, whether they're sold at fairs or at gun shows or over the internet, that we need to make sure that the guns are in safe hands. And you did raise the issue of domestic violence, and frankly, that's one of the things that concerns me most, because I know we do not have a high rate of gun violence, but actually it is happening, and it's behind closed doors. And I want to bring that problem out into the open and say, look, this is an epidemic that we need to face. And there's a whole raft of ways to address it, but one which is keeping guns out of folks' hands by having those background checks. In 2013, we had the 8th highest rate in the country for domestic homicides. Background checks can help save lives.
Those states that have it have showed reductions, haven't they?
Yes, in states where there are background checks required for handguns, there is a 46% fewer incidents of women being shot to death by their domestic partner. It also reduces death gun deaths for police and suicides. And sadly, Vermont also is a very high suicide state, particularly for adolescents. And this is personal for me because someone in our community, a young man who actually was my daughter's boyfriend when they were in middle school, just 2 weeks before their high school graduation, he took his life with a gun that he should never have had access to. And I've certainly, we all know Cheryl Hanna, and she is a mentor of mine. And I want to do more to save lives. I believe that very common sense approaches like background checks can actually save lives. And we're not going to take guns away from safe gun owners, just those who shouldn't have them.
I think that's what the law we did was just to coordinate it with current federal law. So, in closing, you have anything else you want to add, including how can people get in touch with you, or if they want to find out more? Do you have a website, a phone number for people to get in touch with you?
Yes, I'm so pleased to be able to be on this show with you, Mike, and I love being in Windham County, and I love hearing from Vermonters. That's what I'm doing every single day all over the state. So you can contact me through my website, sueminter.com. You can find out more about where you can meet me in groups and what you can do to help. And I'd love to talk with you, to email with you, to communicate with you, and hopefully to meet you in person. I'm so proud of who we are as Vermonters. I will never forget what it was like to help lead an extraordinary recovery where Vermonters came together by the thousands to rescue one another. And I truly believe that when Vermonters come together, when we're all in, we can make the impossible possible. We've done it. And I want to help lead the next phase of our strong recovery from the recession, to grow our economy, to support our working families, and to protect our environment. And I'd love to have your support as your next governor of this great state.
Well, thanks a lot for taking the time, Sue.
Thank you. So
right.
Nice to be with you.
You bet. And look forward to seeing you more in Windham County.
I'll be back.
Even beyond the August 9th primary.
Thank you.
And thanks again for the people at BCTV, once again, helping bring the work of the legislature and hopefully the future administration to you here. We'll be, as we get heading to the next election cycle, we'll be having other people on, local candidates, and also looking ahead to the next legislative session. Until next time, this is State Representative Mike Mrowicki. Thanks a lot.